Hi 4-H garden campers, I heard you love gardening and you want to learn a lot about plants. We are here at the Field and Fork Student Gardens at the University of Florida campus. This is an amazing garden and I think we're going to go take a look around. My name's Wendy Wilber, I'm the State Master Gardener Coordinator and I'm going to teach you a few things that are happening in this garden. Here at this garden, they have a 3-bin composting system. This is the first bin and the active bin where they are mixing together kitchen waste, like you see these carrots in here, eggshells, there's an old cucumber back here, and they're mixing that with wood chips as well as leaves and other material from the garden. And this decomposes and becomes compost. But it takes some time. So we're going to move on to the next bin. This is our cooking bin here. And as you can see, it is beginning to decompose. And you know that the compost is getting ready when it no longer looks like compost anymore, when it no longer looks like kitchen scraps anymore. We can still see a little bit in there, but it's beginning to break down. And then our third bin is the ready bin. This is the finished compost. And as you can see, when we dig past the wood chips on the top, we can see the soil and the compost down at the bottom. So this is ready, almost ready to be used in the garden. Maybe your mom has a Tupperware or a container like this that's next to the sink where you put your food scraps. And then they go out to the compost pile. So let's add to the compost pile today. What do I have to put in there? I have avocado skin, I have got some celery tops, and I have my coffee filter from this morning, and I've got some yucky blueberries that didn't quite make the grade. So I'm going to put them in there, and the next thing we need to do is bury it so no animals can come and get in here and take the food. So we cover it up and move it around. And I can feel the heat coming off of this compost pile. It's nice and hot, and we know a compost pile is working when it's hot because all of the microorganisms that are in there, they think that there are 6 billion microorganisms per heaping teaspoon of finished compost. Those microorganisms are working and releasing heat. The ideal temperature for a compost pile is about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see that the compost here at the Field and Fork Garden is just about perfect. The next step after you've added the kitchen material is to top it off with some wood chips or some leaves. I'm using wood chips because that's what we have here, but you could also use leaves and twigs at home. Make sure everything's covered up, and we have just added to the compost pile, and it's awesome. We talked about what you do add to the compost pile, but what don't you add to the compost pile? Well, we have a list because we want our compost pile to be very healthy and robust and give us the best product, compost, that we can get from it. So number 1, do not add any pet waste. No dog or cat poo, okay? We do not add any meat or bones to the compost pile. That is not good for the compost. We don't add any dairy products, so no milk or cheese go into the compost pile. Also, oils or fats. Those can't go in because it makes the compost too heavy and the microorganisms can't break those down, as well as we would never add any glass, plastic, or metal to the compost pile because we want to have the best compost possible. So after a while, you stop adding new material to the compost pile and let it work. Let it heat up and let those microorganisms do their job. And the recipe for great compost is oxygen, moisture, temperature needs to be over 120 degrees, as well as the greens and browns, the leaves and the kitchen scraps doing their work to become compost. Our final step is letting the compost finish. This is when the compost cools down below 100 degrees, and oftentimes we see the worms come in at this point in the finished compost. It starts to really have that final decomposition phase where you can no longer recognize the kitchen waste or anything that you put in it, and you get the beautiful crumbly, almost like a crumbled Oreo kind of soil amendment that comes out of the compost pile. So why should you compost? Well, we found out it's a great thing to do with kitchen scraps and our landscape materials around the yard. It's a form of recycling. You recycle plastic, you recycle paper, you recycle bottles, so you should also recycle the materials from the kitchen and the yard to turn it into compost. When we do this, this keeps those materials out of the landfill, and in the landfill, compostable material can create methane, and methane is one of the greenhouse gases that adds to climate change. So you are doing a good thing for the planet when you compost.